Hey guys, what's up? It's your girl, Grace Tori, and I'm back with a whole new podcast episode. Spooky season has been here for a little while now. It's honestly surprising that I've gone this long without doing any spooky episodes yet, but we're doing our first one today. I'm just going to be chilling, maxing, relaxing, and reading you some spooky stories. I think all of these are from r/ghost stories or from r/true ghost stories. So that is where I got all of these. I tried to compile a good mix. Most of them are just like straight up spooky. So if you are here for the vibes, you want to just chill, hang out, and listen to some spooky stories to get you into the mood for the season, then definitely stick around. Before I jump in, don't forget to follow, subscribe, listen, you know, whatever the term is on the platform that you are on. Don't forget to hit that button to make sure you are notified every time I upload a new episode and you're along for the ride. I am typically a podcast that is dedicated to the girlies in their 20s that are looking to reach all of their goals and they're looking for someone to do that with. So if you want all the tips and tricks and you want a community of girlies that can help you and support you, then you're in the right place. We are currently working on trying to get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you want to be a part of that, definitely subscribe and then comment #galwithgoals and I will respond to everybody who does that. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump on into today's episode. I'm Grace Tori and you're listening to That Girl the Podcast. Grab a beverage of choice and settle in, because the new episode is starting now. If you see anybody running and jumping around, it's definitely my dogs. Obviously, Evie is behind me, but then Luna is running around the house. He has had a very big weekend, so he's a little overstimulated. There's a lot going on for him right now. So he is just doing his thing, but yeah. Before I jump in, I do want to give you a disclaimer. Obviously with these spooky stories, that means there's going to be talks of death. There is some that include suicide and other triggering factors. I think those are the only main ones that are talked about, but I did want to go ahead and give you that warning. To get us started, this one is from r/true ghost stories, and it says, a series of my own scary experiences and some I witnessed. Then there's only one that they listed, and it's quite a long one, but it's really good, so we're going to start off with that one. So it starts. This one I vaguely remember, but I know I was 6 to 7 at the time. I live in a province somewhere in the Philippines, and Philippines is very well known for some scary things. My parents decided one Friday night that tomorrow we'll visit my grandparents, and they live in a small town that barely has any neighbors. They have a corn and coconut farm there. The next day we got packing for that 1-hour trip. We packed a good 2 days worth of clothes and brought some food and snacks. My grandparents love having us because they get lonely on the farm. My grandfather has an old motorcycle that he uses to ride around the farm to survey if the crops or produce are ready to harvest. He brought me with him one of the days of our visit. I was happy because as an only child, my parents were very protective of me. So we rode around while my Lolo, which is what they call their grandfather, points at some crops and tells me about it. I was ecstatic. At some point, Lolo stopped the motorcycle to go to the bathroom. He let me down from the front of the motorcycle and told me not to move. I don't know what came over me, but I disobeyed my Lolo and silently walked away from him, hiding behind a big mango tree. I was giggling, excited about my plan, but I felt my arm hair stand when I heard Lolo's motorcycle engine roar and take off. In my mind, I was asking if my Lolo also pulled jokes on me. Did he leave me? Forget me? That was what my poor 6 to 7-year-old mind was thinking as I came out from my hiding spot. All I saw was the back of the motorcycle as he took a left turn, and I was alone. Left alone in the middle of the farm with zero idea how to get back. I started crying as I walked aimlessly. The birds mocked my crying like they were teasing me. I shouted for my mom as if they could hear me. We were a good 20 minutes away from home, and there were no neighbors for another half a mile. I was afraid. That was until 3 women dressed in a traditional Filipino dress approached me. They were beautiful, a real Filipino beauty standard. I remember one of them handing me a banana leaf covered in candy in an attempt to stop my crying. I was mesmerized. As one, I never saw people wearing traditional clothing before, and 2, their smile was like a ray of sunshine in early morning. I felt warm and secure at that time. I remember one of them asking me to hold their hand with a smile on her face. They were urging me to go with them. I was about to when someone roughly pulled me from my collar and pulled me away from the woman. It was my grandmother's brother. He was equipped with a machete for coconuts. He was glaring at the woman, but still respectfully took his hat off and gave a silent nod at them. My eyes went from him to the 3 women back and forth. I was confused. The child has parents to take care of her. You can go, he said sternly. The woman only stared at him as he slowly walked back, pulling me with him. After a good 10 meters distance, Grandma's brother picked me up, turned, and carried me towards a path leading to somewhere. Eyes up front and don't look back, he instructed. Albeit confused, I did what I was told. 10 paces after, I heard my parents' voice shouting my name. I was close to home. I was so close to home. Now my confusion grew even more. If I was this close to home, then why didn't I hear my parents earlier? They blocked your hearing. They want you to only hear them, is what he said when we neared our home. My parents ran from our left when they saw us, their face washed with relief. They thanked Grandma's brother, who just nodded and left. It was 5 years later that they explained to me what and who those women were. They were called the Tres Marias. They were said to be women of 1800s who lost their children to the war and killed themselves out of grief. My parents said that the woman always wears a traditional clothing and isolate children from their parents or guardians to make them their own. They coaxed children with their sweet smile and sense of security. They said that that day, Grandpa was hypnotized and forgot about me. Only when he arrived home did he remember I was with him. If Grandma's brother didn't find me that day, I could have vanished forever and would have never been found. That is a spooky one to start off with. That's, especially as a child, I can't imagine how scary that must have been. Because, one, not only are you lost, but two, who are these women? Three, you're so confused. I'm spooked. That is definitely a good one to start off with. The next one we are going to talk about is called My Haunted House in Rota, Spain. I hope I pronounced that correctly. When I was stationed at the naval base in Rota, Spain from 2016 to 2018, I lived off base in a house that was much older than I realized. The oldest building in the area is the Castle of the Moon, built in the 13th century. So yeah, history runs deep there. The house I lived in always felt cold and draining, and from day one I suspected it might be haunted. My landlord even admitted they avoided going in unless absolutely necessary, which should have been a red flag, but I didn't think much of it at the time. At first, it was small stuff. Random noises coming from rooms no one was in, things being moved around, cold spots that never went away, even in the summer heat. It was weird, but I wasn't too freaked out until one day I invited a buddy over. He brought his dog, but the dog refused to step foot inside. We laughed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. While giving my friend a tour, I left him in the hallway to grab a couple beers. That's when I heard him shout, "Did you just open the basement door?" I hadn't touched it, but he swore he saw the doorknob turn and the door open on its own. At that moment, it hit me. This wasn't all in my head. All those things I brushed off suddenly felt very real. After that, things escalated. Doors I had closed would be open when I returned, chairs would move, and the house would be freezing. One night, I woke up to find all my blankets thrown into the corner of the room. When I went to retrieve them, every hair on my body stood on end, like something was there, watching me. But when I turned around, nothing was there. The worst part? I started feeling drained all the time. I was irritable, exhausted, and burning out at work. I started to suspect that the house, or whatever has been in it, was affecting me in ways I hadn't before. Things really hit a peak after a night out drinking. I came home and decided to confront whatever was haunting me. That night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs, except the steps didn't stop at the top. They continued up the walls and onto the ceiling. In a panic, I pulled the covers over my head, hoping it would stop. It did. For a while. In the weeks that followed, it was quiet, until the footsteps started again. This time, I had enough. I yelled out, demanding that whatever it was leave me alone. There was silence, and after that, the disturbances seemed to ease up. A few months later, I moved back to the US, but to this day, I still think about that house and the sense of being watched. Even now, thinking back on it sends shivers down my spine. That's so spooky. I know the feeling of living somewhere. I grew up in a haunted house, and I know the feeling of living somewhere and it draining you, or feeling like the energy of the place is affecting you and getting moody and such. So that is spooky. I don't like that feeling at all. And I'm sorry. I don't want to say I'm sorry you had to go through that, because the experience is spooky, and I'm sure I don't know, I feel like some people like having that experience. Some people don't, but some people do. But it is spooky nonetheless. By the way, I switched over to r/ghost stories, and I think the rest of my stories are on there. That was that story. This one is titled Non-Believer Questioned Everything After This. I'm an atheist. I've never believed in anything supernatural or the spirit world, but this one weird thing happened to me. It was the early 2000s. I was 21. My granddad was in hospital with bone marrow cancer. He didn't have long. In fact, that day we'd been told to visit and say our goodbyes. It It was October, so the evenings were getting darker. It was only about 7 p.m. when I got home. I rolled a joint, put Fast and Furious 2 in the DVD player, opened my bedroom window, and lit it. The entire house went dark, like a power cut, TV off, lights out, everything. I noticed as I looked out to the streets, it's only our house. Dad checks the fuse box and nothing had tripped it out. It was only off 2 minutes and then everything comes back on. That exact moment, the phone rings, and it's Nan saying that Granddad has died. He was an electrician. This one is titled 3 of My Personal Encounters, Debatably, From Least to Most Spooky. Hi there, Reddit. In honor of spooky season, I finally felt motivated to begin In honor of spooky season, I finally felt motivated to begin sharing some of my personal experiences. I'm pretty new to Reddit, so I apologize if I do it wrong. There is a disclaimer. I'm not gonna lie, I'm one of those people who has had quite a few unexplainable things happen to me in my life, even from a young age. I don't think I have any kind of special connection to the beyond or anything like that. I'm just a really perceptive person. I can notice when even something small in a room I'm familiar with has been changed, purely based on the vibes in the room being different than usual. I am not one of those people who lies to get attention. I know a few people like that. And if you knew me, you'd know that I don't just ignore weird sounds or write things off as my imagination. I'm hypervigilant, some say paranoid, and will investigate and try to find explanations for the unexplainable. These stories are just a few of the things I have not been able to explain. So these are 3 stories that we'll read that this Redditor has left for us. So the first one is Bathroom Ghost. In my elementary school, there was a bathroom that I and the other girls in my class used to always joke about being haunted. We were a small, close-knit group of classmates, and we would frequently have sleepovers and watch horror movies that were probably way too scary for a bunch of 6th graders to watch without adult supervision. But we enjoyed it. The bathroom in question had 3 stalls in it, and the one in the middle would occasionally make flushing noises on its own for seemingly no reason. None of us ever really believed it was haunted. It was mostly a joke, and we didn't take it seriously. One day, I had to go to the bathroom in the middle of class, so I was excused and went down there by myself. Let me describe the layout of this bathroom, as it's important to the story. The entrance to the bathroom starts with a heavy wooden door that creaks loudly and has an iconic swooshing sound when it closes. Then you turn around to make your way out from behind the privacy wall, and you get to the part of the bathroom with the sinks, 3 total on a ledge connected to the wall. From there, facing the sinks, you can turn and see the 3 bathroom stalls off to the right, 2 normal and 1 handicapped that are against the back wall parallel to the sinks. Directly in front of the 2 normal bathroom stalls is a blank wall that makes the area in front of the stalls feel narrow, a little like a hallway. In front of the handicapped stall, the space in front of it opens up into a deeper room that has a bench for people to sit and a small shower off in the corner that nobody ever uses, but is otherwise an empty tile room. So I go in there, and for some reason, maybe forgetfulness, I go in the middle stall. The bathroom was completely empty, but maybe a minute or 2 later, I heard the loud squeak of the heavy wooden door opening and closing, and someone coming into the bathroom with me. I could hear the footsteps of them passing the sinks before I saw their shoes walk past the stall that I was in from under the door. They were little kids' shoes, maybe pink Skechers, the kind with little decorations on the sides that look like they should be able to light up. But these ones looked really muddy and dirt-covered. I watched them walk past me, and I didn't hear the footsteps anymore, so I assumed they went to the handicapped stall to my right. Normally, I wouldn't have paid any attention to this, but I was a 6th grader at the time, and the kid who'd walk past me seemed to be around kindergarten to 1st grade aged, and since the part of the school that had the little kid classrooms was all the way on the other side of the school, I thought I should wait for them to finish and walk them back to their class. And then I could tell them that next time they needed to use the bathroom, they should go to the ones nearest to their classrooms. So I finished up and left the stall to go wash my hands. While I was standing there, waiting for them to come out, I realized that none of the stall doors were closed. At this point, I was sure that the kid had come to hide from class, so I went to go see what they were up to. As I peeked in the door of the handicapped stall, nobody was in there. Nobody was in any of the stalls, actually. I went into the deeper room to look for them, wondering if they had gone to hide in the shower, but they weren't there either. They weren't under the bench or the sinks, and unless they had somehow managed to climb up the walls and squeeze into the ceiling tiles, there wasn't anywhere else to hide. I swear, I'd never heard the door to the bathroom open for them to leave. I never saw their feet walk back to my stall. I could see all the way around to the wall in front of the stalls. They couldn't have gone past me unnoticed. I never heard their footsteps, and their extremely muddy shoes didn't leave a single print on the otherwise clean floor. They were just gone. Needless to say, I went back to class quite a bit paler than I had been before and told my friends. After that, the stuff about the bathroom being haunted didn't really feel like jokes anymore. That's terrifying. I feel like there's something about all school bathrooms that's a little eerie. Probably because schools are so old most of the time that there's something eerie about them because of the age and maybe the fluorescent lighting. But yeah, that's spooky. This next one is titled Shadow Man. This next story is a contender for one of the scariest things I've ever seen with my own eyes. The year was either 2016 or 2017. I was a freshman in high school and I had just gotten out of my weekly dance class across town. My dad came to pick me up because I couldn't drive, and so I was sitting in the passenger seat as he took me home. It was fall, sometime around 8 or 9 p.m., and it was dark outside. There's a shortcut my dad likes to take to avoid some traffic lights by driving down a smaller road that connects two of the larger ones. The road is lined with some less flashy businesses like car repair shops, HVAC repair, and a tax firm or something. It's a place with minimal street lights. There's a business at the end of the street near where we turn on that I always look at because its address is 2221, and there's kind of a running joke in my family to point out triple numbers for some reason. The building only has the ground floor and is a bit house-shaped, sloped roof, brick and wood paneling, and wooden front doors, except that instead of one front door, it has two, one on the left and one on the right, and wall lights beside either door to show that the stores were still open. As my dad turns onto the street, my eyes drift towards the building nonchalantly as usual, except this time when I saw there was anything but usual. The doors weren't closed, first of all. The left one was cracked open slightly, and I could see a man peering from inside. He was an African-American man, maybe in his 30s or 40s, and he was poking his head out from behind the door, keeping his body shielded behind the wood like one might do if they were opening the door to someone they didn't trust. What got my attention the most about this man was the look on his face. Pure terror. It gave me chills. His eyes were open so wide that even from the street I could see the whites of his eyes all the way around his irises, and his mouth was ajar as if he was frozen in shock. He wasn't moving, just staring out into the parking lot in front of him. As our car continued around the corner, I followed his gaze to try and see what he was looking at, and then I saw it. The parking lot wasn't empty like I had previously thought. There was a man standing about 10 feet away from him, except it wasn't a man, it was a shadow. But not flat against the pavement. It was standing up perpendicular to the ground like a person would. But I could see through its shadowy form all the way to the car repair shop in the background. I practically pressed my face up against the glass to get a better look. The man was tall, definitely over 6 feet, probably closer to 7 or 8 foot tall, and he was thin and lanky. I could see the silhouette of clothing on him. He was wearing a top hat with a wide brim, a long coat, a trench coat, or maybe a suit with tails. I couldn't quite tell. He was holding a cane. It looked like he was talking to the man behind the door, or at least staring him down. I watched the scene for as long as I could, craning my neck to watch them as our car drove past. I could see the shadow man from all angles, his right side, his back, and then his left. I could see the wall-mounted porch light through his back, and although the light touched him, he himself didn't cast a shadow. Once they were out of sight, I spun around to ask my dad, "Did you see that?" And of course his reply was, "See what?" I told him what I saw and he laughed, but it was fair. I wouldn't have believed it except that I saw it with my own eyes. I didn't ask my dad to turn back because, honestly, I was afraid. The whole ride home, and the rest of the night for that matter, I kept replaying what I saw over and over in my head. It felt like I got a glimpse into someone else's waking nightmare. It felt like I saw something I wasn't supposed to. The next time we drove by that building, everything was normal, but a few weeks later there was a sign on the door, and I got the impression that the business was relocating. I didn't look into it though. Now I wish I had. At the time, I had never even heard of the Hat Man or whatever people call him. It wasn't until a few months later that I saw about it online and realized it basically matched what I saw that night. Okay, well, that gave me chills. Actually gave me chills. And then there was a sound outside of my office door, and I'm spooked. I'm very spooked. So we're just gonna move on to the next one. This next one is titled Church Radio. This one is the scariest in my opinion because it felt personal. All of the paranormal experiences I've had, even the ones I haven't told here, have felt like I was getting a glimpse into something I usually couldn't see, but this one felt directed at me. The year was either 2017 or 2018, and I was probably a sophomore in high school, and it took place at my church. My church isn't hollowed ground or anything. We're in a building that's just a warehouse with the interior changed to look like a church. Up until this point, I could feel an energy there, but it had only been small things, like creaking floors, cold rooms, feeling breathing on my neck, and just a general uneasiness about the back hallway. But this was the moment that solidified my bad feelings. It was around 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. The weekly youth group had wrapped up and everyone had gone home except for me and my mom, because she had the keys to lock up the building. My mom needed to water some of the plants, and she asked me to go look around for anything that needed cleaning up. I went down to the back hallway and began checking the rooms for messes. When I got to the nursery, I flipped the light switch on and saw that one of the toys in the room was out and had a lot of its pieces out on the table against the black wall. The only other thing on the table was an old AM/FM radio that nobody ever used. I got to work putting the pieces back together and putting the toy back in its place, and when I was done, I looked over the room one more time, and all was well, so I turned to leave. When I made it to the door and reached to turn the light off, however, I got a weird feeling. It felt like something inside of me was telling me to wait, and there was something that I needed to watch. So I turned around and I waited. To this day, I don't know why I did this, standing there staring into an empty room like that. I guess I just felt like I was supposed to. I was waiting there like that for somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute, feeling stupid, but then something happened. The radio turned on all by itself. My eyes were wide as I watched the little red line begin to move across the channels as hissing static played loudly over the speakers. After a few seconds, I began to hear a voice. It was a man, and his voice was deep and garbled by the static. He was either speaking in a language that I couldn't recognize, or his voice was so drowned out by the static that I couldn't understand him. This went on to a good 15 to 30 seconds, until the voice stopped and the radio turned itself back off. And I just stood there. I think I was in shock. Before that moment, it had never even occurred to me that the radio was plugged in, let alone still worked. I stood there for a minute or two. I felt frozen, waiting for the radio to turn back on and the man to speak to me again. But it never happened. What snapped me out of my paralysis, however, was a smell that began to drift towards me from the side of the room with the radio. It smelled like rotten eggs. At this point in my life, I had seen enough about ghosts and demons online to know that the smell of rotten eggs or sulfur could mean only bad things. So I switched the lights off and bolted out of the room to go find my mom in the church kitchen. The shock had worn off, and my brain was in full problem-solving mode. The sink in the kitchen has a history of giving off a slight sulfuric scent when using the hot water, so I ran to ask my mom if she'd been running the hot water. She said she'd only used the cold. The kitchen didn't smell like rotten eggs, so how would the smell have gotten all the way to the nursery that was a few hallways away? I still shake when telling the story, and to this day, I have no idea what happened. All I know is that it was trying to talk to me. Okay, I have chills. I just got a weird tinnitus type situation with my ear that's never happened before. I'm home alone, and these are starting to freak me out. I didn't think this through, but of course I'm going to continue. I'm just very spooked. Maybe I'll have to go get myself ice cream or something after this to make myself feel better, because I'm spooked, guys. I am spooked. Oh my god. Ooh, okay. Also, there's nothing that compares to a church at night. I grew up going to church, and fun fact, we would go to Wednesday night church. My mom had a adult group, and they would typically talk after Wednesday night church. They would do the Bible study or whatever while we would go to the kids' church, and then they would talk forever, and they would eventually close out the church, so they'd close the doors or whatever, and I and the other kids would just hang out while my parents talked to all the other parents. And so the rest of the church, which was a pretty decent sized church, was already shut down. The lights were off, everything was shut down. And so, being children, we always would play hide and seek, and I can still feel the stress and the sweat dripping down my brow as we played hide and seek, and I would just go by myself, which I would never do now, to a random side of the church that no one was on, and hide for 30 minutes in the pitch black. Are you kidding? So stressed, so scared out of my mind. And I just did that for funsies until my mom would come and be like, "Hey guys, time to go." And we'd be like, "Oh, okay." But they would never find me half the time, and I'd just be hiding. You're kidding. So yeah, I'm spooked. This next one is titled Basement Ghost. Hi Reddit, it's me again. It's been a while, and I don't have any excuse except the fact that I'm lazy and life is busy. Nevertheless, I'm going to try to post on here more since it's Halloween season, and who doesn't love some ghost stories? Today's story is another one of my own. A couple years back, I was home with my mom and nobody else. We were laying in my mom's bed, both on our phones, sitting in silence. You know how in some homes, the vents in one room go to another room? Well, mine do that. As we laid in silence, my mom said, "Hey, is the TV on? I can hear something. Will you go walk around and make sure nothing is on?" I reluctantly said yes and got up to checking each room to find nothing. When I was just about to call it quits, I heard something coming from my basement. Now at this time, the bedroom in the basement was empty as it had just flooded. I opened the door of the basement and remember the light bulbs didn't work from the flooding. I shined my flashlight and made my way down the stairs. My basement walls are lined with bookshelves full of old books, toys, and a lot of my great-grandmother's antiques. Same, girl. Same. I was painting the bookshelves with my flashlight and saw what was making the noise. Sitting on a shelf was a horse music box spinning around playing music. As soon as I shined my light on it, it fell off the shelf. Of course, I turned and ran upstairs. My mom insisted that I go back down and try and find the music box. To this day, we've never found it. I'm sorry. What? I have no explanation for this. Also, your mom was just like, go back down and find it and didn't help you? Excuse me? Absolutely not. This next one is titled The House Facing the Woods. Growing up, after my parents split up, my mother had me move with her half the time to a house that she had shared with her other divorced friend and her daughter, who was a few years older than me. I was around 11 and her daughter was about 14. Life was full of turmoil at the time for me as the youngest child, only girl, poverty-stricken, and my mother an alcoholic. I'm so sorry. I just want to start off by saying that's not easy and I'm so sorry. Continuing on though. This house gave me the creeps from day one of moving in. The thing that always seemed so strange to me was that the house was facing opposite of the road, the only one like that on the entire street. Long dirt driveway that led up to the house, which our main entrance was from the back porch into the kitchen. This was a 3-story home, including the basement, which was completely unfinished except for the washer and dryer that of course was hooked up way in the back corner of the entire room. On the first floor was the master bedroom, the only bathroom, a computer room, the door to the basement, and the kitchen living room area. Upstairs were 2 bedrooms, one my mother and I shared, and the other one the daughter stayed in. The master bedroom downstairs was for my mother's friend. Now I was young and alone, always had superstition, so I looked harder into any little thing I thought was a ghost. One thing that triggered me right away was the basement door. It was lashed to the wall but loosely. It was constantly being, quote-unquote, blown open by the draft, as the adults of the house would say. That explanation never sat right with me. I believed in my heart there was a spirit there, letting its presence be known through that door. It would happen at the most random of times and almost purposely when it was just me by myself downstairs nearby. This alone had me become very imaginative about what was going on. I would create stories in my mind of what could be. I knew I was taking these slight paranormal experiences and running with them in my mind, but there were a few things that truly made me feel it was all so real. I was going to school and telling my friends ghost stories about the house as a way to garner attention and almost cope with the situation. I was pretty much lying about 98% of everything I said. But the truth is this. The basement door was opening on its own. The daughter of my mother's friend didn't believe what I had to say at first until one day after high school, she got home before anybody else, she went to shower, and after finishing the shower while home alone, the locked doorknob in the bathroom shook rapidly as if someone tried to force their way in. That's a no from me. That's a no from me, dog. This bathroom door was on the opposite side of the basement door in the same hallway. She believed me from that moment on. Her friend came over once that claimed to be a psychic medium, and he said that he saw a tall, dark figure walk out of the hallway into the kitchen as well. Besides all that is the night you could say I got what I asked for. Clear, cold, hard proof that I was living in a haunted house. I've told this story to anyone that even cared to listen and have been met with so many different reactions. People have flat out said they don't believe me because of how crazy it sounds. So here's what happened. I was in the computer room downstairs. It was around 9 p.m. and I was using the house phone to talk to my friend from school about whatever we were doing on the computer together. The adults weren't home, just me downstairs, and upstairs was my mother's friend's daughter taking a weed nap. No joke, she was a stoner. The door to the computer room was open and had a clear view down the hall to the basement door, which was a bit too close for comfort. As I'm on the phone, the basement door creaks open. I immediately got scared and decided to go upstairs as quick as possible. My friend on the phone knew about the situation, but being the bold kids we were, she encouraged me to go back downstairs after a few moments of being upstairs bored without the computer. I agreed to be ballsy and head back downstairs, except my approach is what I believe what warranted what happened next. I hung up the phone with my friend and started to go back downstairs, confronting the spirit that I felt was harassing me and personally targeting me. At the time, "What Do You Want From Me" from Adam Lambert was big on the radio, so I sang the line, "What do you want from me?" going down the stairs. I take it even further and start acting confrontational towards the spirit, saying, "F you, ghost, you can't do shit to me," and sticking my middle finger up the basement door. I know, super cringe and embarrassing to even remember. While I'm doing this, I walked around to the kitchen. My back is to the front back door. Keep in mind it's like 9 p.m. at night. The doorbell rings at that exact moment. I'm expecting it to be either my mother or her friend getting home after a long day. Super embarrassed that I just got caught talking to nothing. I turn around and pull the sheer curtain to the side to see who's standing at the door. Nobody. This doorbell speaker system is hooked up in the hallway of the basement door. Unfortunately for me, this isn't the regular ding-dong traditional doorbell. For some odd reason, we had the super extra doorbell system that played a different song every time you ring it. For example, Jingle Bells or something else short and sweet. So by the time the doorbell chime completes and I see there's nobody at the door, I fully process what's going on. And yet, it gets worse. After the first bell chime finishes, I swear to everyone in my life and all that I cherish, a voice comes out of the speaker system. A feminine voice. One that is speaking gibberish to my ears, and then a doorbell rings again. I ran up the stairs so fast, I'm screaming the daughter's name to wake her up and bang on her door so she can wake up and come unlock it to let me in. By the time she does and I come inside, she's like, "What is going on?" I told her to be quiet and she got to hear the final doorbell chime. I explained to her what happened and she just sat there in shock. A few other incidents occurred during my time there, but nothing as clear and terrifying as this night. A few months later, my mother and her friend had a huge fight and we moved out. I believe that spirit in that house targeted me and fed off the negativity in my life. I've spoken to a few psychics since becoming an adult, and one psychic in particular brought up this spirit and says she followed me. I believe it may be true. I have a reoccurring dream of a girl locked in the basement, my spirit begging me to save her, not to leave her. I can never forget the experience in that house, and especially not that night. That is so crazy, and I do 100% believe that, like, ghosts and certain things feed off of negative energy, which is why I try to, like, be on a positive vibe for the most part, because I'm scared. And that's just so spooky. I'm so sorry you went through all of that negativity, but I'm glad you're out of it now. This next one is titled Freaked Out and Need Clarity. So this really freaked me out. This experience, as I'm a devout Christian, so don't know a lot about this and never have experienced anything like this before. So I'm sitting in my new home in my room doing diamond art, and all of a sudden, as clear as anything, I hear my son call mommy. It was his voice. What's freaking me out is he's already left for school in his taxi over 1 hour before I heard it. I'm really freaked out as I know it was his voice. I immediately turned around to where the voice was coming from and nothing was there. I stupidly called out, "Yes," and now I'm thinking I shouldn't have done that. I do believe in the paranormal and afterlife, but I'm still freaked out. Any advice, please? Could this be a spirit? And if so, what is it? A good or bad one? I'm not scared, just freaked out. Yeah, so that sounds like a mimic. I would ignore it. Definitely have the house cleansed is the best way to go about this. But yeah, sounds like a mimic. Spooky ooky. And it's okay, in my opinion, it's okay to be a Christian and still believe in all these things, because, I mean, I do. And I think that if you, like, believe in demons, you also have to believe in angels. And I'm not going to get into the whole big thing, but I think that there's definitely more out there in other dimensions than what we see. And yeah. Alright. This very last one is titled, Lived in a Haunted House for 3 years and Only Remember 7 months. As a kid of about 9 years old, my mom moved my brother into this house that was very close to our school at the time. I spoke to my mom about this house one day, reminiscing on our time there, and I said by the end of it, "I'm so glad we only lived there for 7 months." My mom, shocked and confused, explained we lived in that house for 3 years. For the life of me, I can't recall more than 7 months. These are the things that I do remember. 1. There was a gray Persian cat that kept coming into the house even though all windows and doors were closed. You would let it out, and as soon as you turn around, it would be behind you, always just staring. I have a photo of this cat. 2. The room I share with my brother was always icy cold, even colder at night, so we couldn't sleep in there and slept next to my mom. 3. Every morning you would hear pots stir in the kitchen sink. My mom always said not to go in the kitchen when it happens. But one time I did and saw a black figure just standing by the sink. 4. My brother and I always shared birthday parties. We are 2 years and 10 days apart. I only vaguely remember the one party. I was walking down the hallway. I could hear breathing and footsteps behind me. Everyone was outside. I turned around and there was nothing. 5. Went to the bathroom and saw a face behind me in the mirror. I don't remember any other time I have used the bathroom. I don't remember that bathroom except for that moment. 6. One night I woke up and saw my mom staring at something. I looked over and saw red eyes. My mom just said, "Close your eyes. Don't look." As I closed my eyes, everything started to shake. My home country is not known for earthquakes. And then everything went deathly quiet. 7. Every time my brother and I would come back from school, we would see a black figure sitting by the window, always closing the curtains as soon as we would get to the door. 8. The last thing I really remember, I used to play hide and seek with my mom whenever she would come back from work. This particular day, I decided to hide in the closet. I giggled as I heard my mom calling for me. At that moment, I heard something giggle beside me. My blood ran cold as I turned my head and saw those same red eyes, that same black figure sitting next to me, smiling at me. In 9, I started getting premonitions through dreams since the incident in the closet. Started as small things, seeing our cat chase the gray Persian cat. Our cat never chased the Persian cat and never went outside into the street like shown in my dream. But one day our cat got out, and when we came back from school, we saw our cat chase the Persian cat exactly like in my dream. These dreams progressively got worse. Another where I twisted my ankle before a netball tournament. A week later, I twisted my ankle during practice. Another where I would get chased by another kid and I would twist my wrist. After we transferred to a new school, a boy was chasing me because he wanted to kiss me. My foot got caught in a gutter, and I twisted my wrist when I fell forward. I had some that weren't that bad, as dreaming of a driving instructor that was talking to me like I was a child, and I told myself this guy will make you fail. When the time came for me to learn to drive, I met the same guy from my dream, exact same car, same way of speaking, same jersey and everything, so I opted for another instructor and passed my first try. I also dreamed of my own death. I woke up telling my mom I would die by the time I am 33. Currently, I am 32. Since moving away from the house, my memories felt like they were not my own, like I am watching from the outside. Whenever I close my eyes, I see shadowy figures standing over me, smiling that same smile. My dreams were filled with demons with the same smile. They always said they are coming for me, and as the years went on, it progressed to, your time is near. I then met a guy. He told me 2 shadow beings have attached themselves to me, but a bigger one is waiting to claim me. He did something to exorcise these things, and since then, the guy vanished. I did not believe him. I'm still unsure if I do, but still, he exorcised them? There are a lot of things that have happened. Completely personality change, no longer disassociated to decisions or new memories, not as impulsive, not constantly looking for a way out, not looking for ways to get hurt, less clumsy. It is like I've finally gotten control over my own body, over my own mind. I went a complete 180 in a day, and the guilt of my own actions over the years up until then is weighing on me as if I'd never acknowledged them before. I am unsure what to do from here. Since turning 30, I have been feeling like my time is near. My body has slowly been degrading. I am hoping I'm just paranoid that maybe through all this trauma I have lost my mind, but I can't shake this feeling that something has happened. Sorry for the long post. If you made it to this point, thank you for your time. I just really wanted to share with someone. That is so scary, and I really urge you to go talk to someone else, whether it's, like a priest or a psychic medium, someone who is not going to scam you, has proven history, because that is so scary, and I don't want you to have to continue to feel that way. Even though you're probably never going to see this, I'm still going to put that out there in the event that you do. So that is the last and quite possibly the scariest one that we are ending on. If you guys want to read more stories like this, I got all of them from r/ghost stories. Let me know if you want me to do more spooky episodes like this, and I definitely will. Obviously, it's spooky season, so I'm going to try and get some more out. Maybe I'll do a couple extra bonus ones if you guys really want more like this. But I have kind of a passion for, like, spooky things. I've always been very sensitive to them, so I love doing episodes like this. I look forward to spooky season every year. So, yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to follow, comment, like. Engagement is free. It takes about 2 seconds, and it's an easy, amazing way to help out the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and comment #GalWithGoals if you want to join the group of girlies. But I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next podcast episode. Stay spooky, guys. I love you so much. Bye.
You was the first